across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good evening to you. Well, they say that the first casualty of war is the truth, and certainly when Caroline Leavitt, the American press secretary, stood up today and said we're not arming the Kurds, that's not what's happening, nothing's going on. Well, we do have some breaking news for you. The Kurds have started a ground offensive against Tehran. So the Kurds, thousands of Kurdish fighters have begun ground activity inside Iran from areas near the Iraqi border where there is a large number of Kurds there. Israeli and American officials confirmed this in a development that could open up an additional front against Tehran as regional tensions continue to escalate. And as we've been saying all along, it is almost impossible to effect regime change from the air, so there had to be boots on the ground at some point. Of course, that would be deeply unpopular for America if American boots were put on the ground. So the rumours have been circulating for a few days now that the CIA have been arming, for quite some time, have been arming the Kurds in that region in order for them to become the boots on the ground. The problem is, of course, that this could kick off an internal civil war. So we'll bring you more on that and hopefully some pictures if we get them a little bit later on. But that is the latest breaking news, that a ground offensive has begun against Iran. So within Iran, but against Iran. We'll wait and see what happens with that as we go through the evening. We'll be keeping an eye on that. But this certainly takes the fight to a different place, to a different level. Coming up on the show, of course, there is talkback, and I do want to talk to you about this. I want to talk to you about what's going on, and I also want to talk to you about the so-called special relationship, which I know Peter was talking about, and Keir Starmer saying, look, I'm not, unless you've got a proper plan, we're not getting involved. Do you support that attitude from Keir Starmer, or are you, like many people, believing that he's just being cowardly and reckless with our relationship with the United States of America? So that's what we'll be talking about at midnight. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do, of course, call you straight back. Plus, you can text talk and then your message to 87222. Coming up for the rest of the programme, we'll be heading off to the United States, actually, but not to look at the war, but to look at the father of a teenage boy who has now been found guilty of being part of a mass shooting because he provided his son with the gun. This is the third time this has happened in the United States, that a parent has been found culpable in mass killings led by their children. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. We're also going to be just ahead of International Women's Day. We're going to be talking about why it is that women still do not feel safe. This is 5 years after the Sarah Everard murder, of course, by that police officer. But first, I'm delighted that we've got this next guest because there's much to talk about with the ground offensive as well. But it's been 5 days since the start of this war in Iran that began with the assassination of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Authorities there have today postponed his funeral ceremony that was due to start tonight. Today, US and Israeli forces have continued their intense strikes across the country. The US has sunk an Iranian warship while Israel has attacked Hezbollah targets in Beirut, and NATO has had to step in and shoot down a ballistic missile heading for Turkey. Article 5 hasn't been triggered, but NATO did respond to this. Meanwhile, a new leader could be announced in Iran very soon, with the late Ayatollah's son emerging as the front runner. But Iran clearly has a plan. What is their plan, and is it working? Well, joining me to answer that question and many more is Ross Harrison, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. and author of the new book, Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy, Strategic Interests, Power and Influence. Ross, delighted you could join me. Can I just first address that breaking news with you that ground offensives are now begun in Iran, led by the Kurds?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the same reports that you have seen, but I think we should be cautious about sort of projecting what the implications are of this and to what degree they're supported from the outside. Remember, the Kurds have a reputation of being particularly strong fighters. They have not been tested in the Iranian context. They've been tested in the Kurdish context, the Syrian context, and to a lesser degree, the Turkish context. But they have been fairly well contained in the Iranian context. And remember, there's also the history of the Kurds having been betrayed and sold out, including the Kurds in Syria by the United States. So I think we should be cautious in terms of projecting what this means. I think we're just going to have to wait and see in the coming days.
Yeah, much is being said there about the Kurds in recent times, that they've been nestling there near the Iraqi border. They've been left alone. They've left everybody else alone. And them actually wanting to be seen to be self-contained and not a risk, say, to Turkey or to the rest of Iran. This would seem to be a sea change for them. Are they just opportunists here, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think the Kurds overall have had this grand vision of a unified country, even though they are dispersed across 4 different countries: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So they've had that vision, but they've been heavily divided. So it's unclear, and they've been divided in some cases. They have been they've actually been at cross purposes with one another. So it's very hard to see whether in fact they're unified enough within the Iranian context in order to be able to make a difference. Are they opportunistic? I think they are nationalistic for sure in terms of their own identity. To what degree they've been integrated into the Iranian narrative, the Persian narrative, we don't know. They're not Persian. They are Iranian, but they're not Persian. So it's really hard to see. And I think we have to look at the behavior and the degree to which they are cohesive in the coming days in order to be able to ascertain that.
I mean, like I said, there's been rumours circulating for a while that the CIA have been arming the Kurds. You just said they're no great fans of America, but it is interesting that both the US and Israel released this information earlier on.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, they clearly, the only way they can advance their cause is through alliances with outside countries, frankly. And whether they've been betrayed or not, they still need the kind of leverage that they would get from an outside power. And it's in the interest of the United States and Israel to basically put forward the narrative that the Iranian regime and Iran itself is coming apart, because that advances and furthers their sense that their war goals or the aims are being realized in real time.
In terms of, we have confirmed that it started, but where it's going to go, we don't know. In terms of what could happen next, could this trigger, because there are so many different factions within Iran, a lot of people don't realise that it is quite scattered. Could this trigger a civil war? Because they will be met with resistance.
It could. I mean, I think for a full-on civil war, you would need multiple ethnic groups to enter. And we don't know what that would look like. Would they unify? Would there be any kind of connectivity between the Kurds and the Baluch and other groups? We just don't know. The Kurds alone, I don't think they could spark a civil conflict.
Yeah.
But I think that a group, an initiative upon the Kurds advancing upon Tehran, for example, are unlikely to be a civil war in and of itself. But it certainly is troublesome for an Iranian regime that is holding on for dear life at this point.
And when we see things like this start, it always makes me very nervous with any type of civil war, unstructured, etc. Could we see this lasting some time?
The conflict overall, or the Kurdish issue?
This Kurdish issue, if they start triggering other factions and other groups and other ethnicities into action.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends upon where the other groups are in terms of their own readiness and whether there's a contagion effect, what we call a demonstration effect or multiplier effect. That's something we don't know. And that would be part of the answer in terms of whether we could see this going on for a long period of time. And it also depends upon the capacity for the central government to strike back in some way or defend the country and the borders of the country, as has been known since, for time immemorial.
Well, the Iranian military, the Artesh, is about 350,000 strong, right? So they would have some power against any uprising.
They would. We don't know to what degree they've been mobilized. I mean, remember, the Iran right now is very opaque because of the internet blackouts and because the regime is intentionally trying to conceal and be opaque because of the security risks that have come about through Israel and through the United States. So, but the Artesh is quite powerful. Whether they have been mobilized up to this point, we don't know. One thing we do know, Petrie, is that after the June war, I know I met with the current president, Pezeshkian, in September, and he indicated that he was actually surprised that a second war had not been started by September. And we're now into March, February and March. So I think they've had a runway to get ready for this kind of an onslaught. They couldn't predict exactly how it would unfold, the same way we can't predict exactly how the Iranian regime is going to respond. But they've had a period of time to respond. The one thing I do know is that they have tried to disappear in plain sight by taking IRGC units and Artesh units and moving them around the country in order to disperse them so that they're not concentrated in Tehran, in Shiraz, and Isfahan, and the major cities. So to what degree there are defense forces now already in the Kurdish region and are able to push this back without mobilizing and having to move through territory, that's something we don't know. But that's something I know the Iranian regime was concerned about, particularly after the killing of Mahsa Amini in 2022. Remember, that sparked the Woman Life Freedom protest, and that was a Kurdish woman. So the Iranians have been concerned about the potential Kurdish uprising since 2022, and certainly since the 12-day war when they were attacked by the United States and Israel the last time.
Now, you say that they've had a while to prepare for this, that they're surprised it didn't happen sooner. But in truth, I mean, Iran the leadership there has been paranoid, and they have been preparing probably for a couple of decades, right? In comparison to what the planning would have been for the United States of America.
Well, they've not been planning for this. They've not been planning for this. They've been planning for this starting about 2024, because their strategy before October 7th, 2023, when Hamas, one of their proxies, attacked Israel, and then there were direct attacks. Iran's strategy was to avoid at all costs any direct kinetic action between themselves and Israel and the United States. They worked through their proxies. So they've had decades of creating what they call this axis of resistance, which is to project power away from the homeland using their proxies. But they were not preparing, and they were not prepared for first of all, any kind of real direct kinetic action between themselves, the United States, because they knew they couldn't win militarily. They could win through the shadowy game of working with their proxies, but they could not win militarily. So this game that they're playing, or that they're involved with now, it's not a game. The battle they're involved with is a relatively new one.
If we look at Iran, and we keep hearing from America, who are being very bullish about it, of course, and saying we've crushed them, they're finished, they're toast. You know, that we've never seen anything like it before. Is Iran crushed?
Well, Iran's not crushed. I mean, the regime is clearly under siege. And remember, I think your listeners and your viewers should understand that the regime is not just under siege externally. It's been under siege to some degree internally. We've seen that basically somewhere between 10 to 12% of the population still supports the regime. So that means about 85 to 88% do not, in different degrees of lack of support. And we saw that manifest in their degree of concern about their being under siege internally in the January protests that were put down brutally, more brutally than they ever have before. So the regime has been under siege domestically, and then they've been weakened. Their deterrence has been lost or degraded over the last couple of years, and now they see direct aggression. So the regime is under siege. To some degree, Petrie, the regime has planned for this. They have an institutional complexity at all different levels that is very, very different than any other country in the Middle East. So they do have a certain amount of resilience in terms of replacing leaders. We've seen the succession process that you mentioned earlier that is taking place right now. They have been able to replace the commanders that have been slain. So they have a lot of institutional resilience complexity. Whether, in fact, that can withstand the attacks that we're seeing now over a protracted period of time, we don't know. That's something that they have to be concerned about. It could crack open at some point. I think the notion that somehow the system can completely collapse and then the Iranian people can take over, as President Trump, I believe, recklessly said, I think that is not is not a scenario that we would project to be the highest probability scenario. But so I think the regime will probably survive in some form or another. That has some probability to it, but we just don't know. It's really hard to project at this. All we can do is look at the different scenarios and then sort of assign probabilities to them. We cannot predict.
I mean, even Donald Trump has said, look, we did have some idea of who we'd like to replace the Ayatollah, but we killed them as well. They're dead as well. And now it looks like his son, and then Donald Trump said, well, we might get somebody worse. Who knows? There doesn't seem to be any structure to either side of this war from an outsider.
Well, there's a structure. There's in some ways a brilliant military campaign, but whether they can translate that military campaign into some kind of an outcome that is better for the Iranian people and better for the United States and better for the region, including Israel, excuse me, that plan does not seem to be in place, or at least it's not being revealed to us. Maybe the Kurdish piece is part of that, because to some degree, the only way to manage an internal process is to have boots on the ground. But remember, having the Kurdish fighters on the ground is not having the U.S. on the ground. And we have a bad history, obviously, of managing through regime change. So it's very, very hard to see what the end game is. I think for the Israelis, it's basically taking the regime apart, possibly or at the very least weakening the regime. But it's not clear from the U.S. perspective what the end game is and to what degree Donald Trump will at some point cut loose and declare victory and move on. That's something the Israelis have to worry about. That's certainly what Iran's strategy is trying to create a wedge between Washington and Jerusalem by inflicting pain on our Gulf Arab allies, who will eventually say to Donald Trump, hey, when is this going to end? So that's their strategy. But we don't really know what the U.S. ground strategy is. When I say ground, I don't mean military strategy. I mean their ground strategy, political strategy.
When we look at Iran at the moment being absolutely bombarded by the US, one of the biggest militaries in the world, if not the big, well, China, I think, probably pips it, but operationally a brilliant military and a very aggressive one, and then you've got Israel as well, whose entire for years and years and years now they've wanted the destruction or the end to the Iranian regime. How can Iran survive this? How does it survive this?
Well, I think they do it through their bringing various levels. So the regime, think about the regime as sort of like a layered cake. And so I think the way they survive it is the institutions remain intact. And then they keep, when one layer of leadership is decimated, they move that forward. But I think the bigger question than surviving it is what does it mean to survive it? Let's assume the people survive and the institutions are somewhat intact, the IRGC and the government, the president and so forth, and there is a new supreme leader. I think the question is, what do they need to do to win? And I think for the Iranians, all they have to do is survive to win. And I think what they're doing is trying to shorten the timeline that the United States is involved with this. And that's part of what seems like a very reckless strategy, and it is a reckless strategy, of attacking their neighbors. I think the goal is to get them to basically, as I mentioned earlier, have them put pressure on the United States to end this conflict. And if the U.S. drops out of this conflict or declares victory, and the regime has survived physically, they can probably survive a transition. And that's the game we're playing at this point.
And it's difficult to know whether that would be a win or a loss, given we don't know what the aim of the conflict really is, right?
You mean a win or a loss for the United States?
Yeah. I mean, if they just pack up and go, I mean, they've got a history of packing up and going and leaving disasters behind them, as we all have. But, if they just pack up and go, say, right, well, we've won our objective, insert objective here, and then just disappear. I mean, they're not going to be forgiven for that, are they, by the Gulf countries? in the Middle East?
You mean the U.S. won't be forgiven, or the Iranians?
The U.S.
Well, it's a dangerous game. They're kind of on a knife edge because they won't forgive the Iranians for a period of time, and they won't necessarily forgive the United States and Israel. I mean, I think the question becomes, in terms of forgiveness, is what state their economy is in at that point in time. Because remember, these Gulf states have put a tremendous amount of energy and investment into their energy and their economic transformation plans. So I think it also depends on where are they economically in terms of their plans and their economic model when this conflict ends.
One thing we have to address, I think, when we're talking about the arsenal that Iran may have, and it's not just the proxies that they've got, but also the terror cells and the potential to mount terror attacks in any country that they would feel that they want to do that. Are we going to start seeing that from Iran, do you think? Is that part of their strategy?
You already have, to some degree, with the entry of Hezbollah into the war.
Yeah.
The two places that I think your viewers and your listeners should watch for is Yemen with the Houthis and the Hashd al-Shaabi in Iraq, because they have remained relatively on the sidelines. So if at some point they enter the fray, and then you have a full kind of activation of Iran's at least erstwhile allies. We don't know to what degree there's command and control or even communication, but those are the militias that are out, and we saw Hezbollah enter just a day or two ago, and right now you need to keep an eye out for the Houthis and for the Hashd al-Shaabi in Iraq. If they start entering the conflict, it could change the dynamic, because what the Houthis are likely to do is disrupt shipping, and the last thing that the West can afford is another front in terms of shutting down shipping. Right now we see the Strait of Hormuz challenge, and if the Strait of Mandeb is also closed or challenged, and then we have an economic catastrophe in our hands, and then Donald Trump is in a bit of a pickle at home.
How long we hear from Donald Trump that they've got, endless weapons. They can go on forever. He can do a forever war if he wants to. Although that doesn't add up when you start looking at the stock that they're using at the moment. How long can America sustain this? How long can Israel sustain this?
Well, probably I would say on the Israel, at this pace, probably for a few weeks on the Israeli side, the U.S. a bit longer. I think what we're seeing now on the part of the Iranians is through attacking Turkey, attacking Cyprus, attacking all the Gulf Arabs, they've widened the battlefield, and the U.S. cannot defend all that territory, frankly. And that's what you're seeing. So I think it depends to what degree the U.S. is able to respond. The U.S. can go longer, I think, but I think I think the Iranians are counting not so much on the U.S. running it, not a war of attrition where the U.S. runs out of firepower. I think on that battle, the U.S. will win and Iran will lose. I think it's much more a political battle of what degree, how long the U.S. can sustain staying in a conflict that they really have no existential fight in. I mean, Iran was not threatening. They may have at some point have threatened Israel. They certainly didn't threaten the United States. So I think it really depends upon how long the U.S. can withstand the political pressure that is likely to build over time should things heat up and expand even further than they are today.
Fascinating to talk to you, Ross. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Ross Harrison there, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. and author of the new book, Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy, Strategic Interests, Power and Influence. Taking a quick break, back in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and if you've just joined us, I just want to tell you some breaking news that thousands of Kurdish fighters have begun ground activity inside Iran from areas near the Iraqi border. Israeli and American officials confirmed that in a development that could open an additional front against Tehran as regional tensions continue to escalate. And as we've been saying for quite some days, you can't affect regime change if that's what your end goal is. From the air, you need boots on the ground, and American boots on the ground would be an incredibly unpopular thing to do. So maybe the Kurdish forces have been encouraged to set about a ground offensive. So we'll keep you abreast of that. And let you know what happens as and when we found out. But that ground offensive has now begun, and that is a sea change in the direction of this war. So we'll keep you up to date with that whenever we get any more information. Right now, though, coming up, don't forget, we're going to be talking about the father who has been found guilty in an American court for aiding and abetting his son in the shooting of school kids and teachers. So we'll be talking about that in a bit. And also John Boothman, the wonderful John Boothman, is joining us at the top of the hour. But before that, it's been 5 years. Can you believe it? I honestly, a million years, I just can't figure them out. But it's been 5 years since Sarah Everard was raped and murdered by an off-duty Met Constable, and the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has said he understands why some women still do not trust the force, and that rebuilding trust would take time. Ahead of International Women's Day on Sunday, new research shows that 1 in 4 women think about personal safety multiple times a day, with the higher figure of 44% amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. The survey, commissioned by Home Security UFI in partnership with the charity Her Centre, found that just 14% of women feel completely safe in their own homes, and that safety is not confined to one setting, but is an ongoing consideration both outside and inside the home. And which woman listening or watching this has not at some point put their keys between their fingers when walking down a dark street, or even a lit street, in fact. Let's discuss this now, as crimes against women and girls seem to be on the rise in this country, with Naomi Smith, that's CEO at Her Centre, that's a women's charity working to support women experiencing abuse. Naomi, thank you very much indeed for joining me. It is a fascinating thing for me that this is something that I think a lot of men, the majority of men, don't recognise that we think about constantly, and that is our safety. If you're getting petrol at a petrol station, you scan. I mean, we always know the exit route, right? We scan everything to figure out a way out, and it's become second nature to us. And it's not paranoia; it is that we feel unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely. I of course talk about this a lot through my work and through just my day-to-day life, and I come across so many men who are safe men who've never thought about it, who don't even realise that it's something that comes into our brain, something that we're taught at like 12. It just doesn't kind of cross into that space because there's not much that they can kind of compare to it.
Is it just because, like you said, the safe men, the good men, should know how we feel? All right. I mean, I spoken to my son and said, look, if you're walking behind a woman in the evening or late at night, then cross the road, make her feel safe. If more men did know what would make us feel safe, then they could do it, right?
Absolutely. I think everybody wants women to be safer. I don't think there's people out there campaigning against it, but I just think that we need to make sure we're having those conversations, and we need to make sure that there's no like taboo around it, which at the moment there is still a little bit.
I'm actually pretty nervous about some of the comments I'm going to get. Even just having this conversation. Oh, it's not all men. Oh, you hate men, and it's just like, no, that is not what we're saying. I don't know why men go to that place. All we're trying to say is we do not feel safe. We have very good reason and evidence to back up why we don't feel safe. Why come at us about that?
Oh yeah, completely. I think the not all men thing, we agree. We absolutely
Yeah,
agree.
we know that.
But sadly, all women have experienced this to some extent, and that's what we need to focus on.
I mean, I always say when people say, oh, it's not all men, and I say, well, okay, then I'm going to give you this bag of sweeties, and I have poisoned 2% of them, and you will end up dead if you eat them. Now, choose a sweet. So it's all men until it's no men, right? Because if we don't, and nobody's going to go, well, I'll take the risk then. So you have to assume that all those sweets are poisoned in order to keep yourself alive. And that is a sort of, that is the only way I can make men understand sometimes. We know it's not all men, but it is a substantial number of them that we have to treat all men with a certain amount of suspicion.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we don't start to talk about it in terms of men versus women. It's everybody against women being raped and murdered. And I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah. I would certainly hope so. What can we do, as a society, to ensure that women and girls feel safe? Because we know they're not right now, right?
They're not. Yeah, we've got the Eufy research that says we don't feel safe, but we work with 1,000 women a year in Greenwich alone. We know that they're not safe, and there are some things you can do. One of the reasons we've partnered with Eufy is because they do the camera doorbells. The more surveillance you can get out there, the more of a deterrent there is. But I think we need to go further. I think that's all putting the onus on women to keep themselves safe. We need to be looking at and talking about prevention and how early we need to be teaching things like, boundaries and consent and positive masculinity.
It's interesting that Sir Mark Rowley is saying that he understands why women don't trust the police. This is 5 years on. Have they made enough progress?
I think the Met, they know what they need to do. I think they've acknowledged what needs to be done. I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think they think they're there yet either.
What could they do?
Again, it's about increasing the community's trust in them, about being present, not just in communities with women, but also in other communities that have many reasons not to trust the police. It's just being out there, making those roadways, and building up that kind of prevention instead of just constantly being there after the case happens.
Yeah, well, that's always the problem, isn't it? But we also see governments talk the talk. Right, they've got all sorts of people who are saying, no, we're going to stop violence against women and girls, we're going to make a difference. And so far, it doesn't seem like much of a difference has been made. What advice would those women give to the government?
I mean, we have seen cases go up, not down. In the last 10 years, we personally have seen our high-risk cases double. So it's not happening. And I think the basics of it is to start listening to women, to believe them when they say what's happening, but also listen to their expertise. There's thousands of women out there. 1 in 4 have experienced abuse. We need to start putting those in the decision-making chair, getting those into the influence in policy, rather than it all being decided without them.
But why are the numbers going up? I mean, like I said, everybody talks about it. We all like to think that men are listening and understanding the fear that we rightly have. And yet those numbers are going up and up and up. And we're seeing fewer and fewer prosecutions.
I think there's a lot of reasons you could say why it's going up. So I just want to say the only reason it ever happens is about control and power. Every other thing is maybe a factor, but it's not the reason. So it's just really important to say that. But I just think as tensions get higher in the country and as we face a financial crisis, as we have things online and we have, the kind of things like in those kind of like the communities that are a little bit misogynistic, becoming more mainstream, all of it feeds into what's happening.
And with those communities, are we talking misogynistic from a cultural point of view, that there needs to be that education?
Yeah, I think education is the most important thing, and education at the earliest point. Obviously done in a way that's appropriate, but definitely education is the answer. I mean,
I was stunned to learn a couple of months ago that illegal migrants that are coming over, they are not taught cultural norms when they first arrive, the young men. I was absolutely stunned by that. I would have thought that along with, here's your phone card and a pair of socks, you would be told, look, culturally, we may treat women differently in this country. Is that something that the government should be looking at?
So what we're seeing statistically, that's not really a factor into what we're seeing in those numbers rising.
It's not?
Not from what we're seeing, no.
But would it be a good step forward, though, to at least educate people from different cultural backgrounds that women do have a different standing in this country?
I think the main thing with the cultural backgrounds is making sure that those communities don't feel isolated, and that the women that do experience those communities feel like they're able to reach out to services in England.
And what is the problem that the police still have with believing women and girls when they come forward?
I wish I knew the answer to that, and I don't. Obviously, there needs to be some kind of evidence. Again, if anything can be caught on these camera doorbells, it helps, but we don't know. We see people with lots and lots of evidence, with hundreds of texts per day where they're being harassed and stalked, and still sometimes it's not enough to get a conviction.
Well, it's sometimes not enough to even get the police interested, right? I mean, they brush people off, especially younger women. We've seen that with the rape gangs. We've seen that with the Epstein files. We've seen that, it's not just a problem in this country, it's a problem globally.
Yeah, it's unbearable, the level that we've got to.
But again, I ask why. We've got more women in more powerful positions now. You would think that the tide would be turning on this, and that sort of lack of understanding of women, or misogyny, or whatever it might be, would be beginning to be filtered out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had some improvements. In 2021, there was some law changes that help with things like coercive control being more recognised, with children being recognised as victims, not just witnesses. So you can see small changes. It's just like we said, it's just not enough. And with how long it's been going on, it's not happening quick enough.
And of course, we have to mention not feeling safe in your own home with domestic abuse cases. And we certainly saw a rise in that during lockdowns and things like that. But that is still a major issue, both for men and women, actually, being domestically abused.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do at her centre, is support people who've experiencing high-risk domestic abuse. And as I said, we can't keep up with the number of cases that are getting referred. It happens in the home. It's not always an intimate relationship either. It's happening between families. It's happening with we've got a lot of adult children abusing their parents because they're still living in the home. It happens with exes, even neighbours in some situations.
Goodness me. I mean, I covered a few months ago now, I think, parental abuse by children, and the figures there were absolutely shocking, actually. Really, really shocking. What do you recommend to somebody who's listening to this who is being abused right now? What do they do?
I think when it's safe to do so, reach out to somebody. As I've already said, 1 in 4 women experience abuse. Someone probably has some understanding of what you're going through. And if not, speak to some of the organisations like ours. We're local, we're based in Greenwich, but there's a version of us somewhere in the country that will be able to reach you. And just reach out, tell someone. If you're not ready to address it yet, an organisation like ours will not force you to leave, will not try to take your children away. It's a listening ear and a first step towards when you're ready to leave. How
do you manage the shame that these people, these abused people, feel? Because they often take the shame upon themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. They have everything taken from them, and we try to empower, build them back up, help them live a thriving life where they actually can, be themselves again, because who they are is often taken from them. So we do a lot of like peer support work, helping people build a community, even build skills, do things like jobs training, because sometimes with economic abuse, someone's kept them from getting anything that could help them get out of their situation. So there's lots of things that can be done around it to kind of help someone rebuild those things that were taken from them.
Good to talk to you. Naomi, thank you very much indeed. Naomi Smith, CEO at Her Centre, a women's charity working to support women experiencing abuse. And I just want to say, if your life is in imminent danger from your abuser, there's only one number you need to call, and that's 999. Okay, so if you feel that you are in imminent danger of your life or for your children, then don't hesitate. Don't think about going to a women's centre. Don't think about anything else. You need to call the police immediately if your life is in imminent danger. Quick break, back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and coming up at the top of the hour, of course, the fabulous John Boothman will be joining us to talk through tomorrow's newspapers. But before that, this fascinating story in the United States of America. A father of a teenage boy accused of killing 4 people in a school shooting rampage in the US state of Georgia has been found guilty of murder, child cruelty and other charges. So that's the father. The boy is yet to be in court, but the father has been found guilty of murder, child cruelty and other charges. Colin Gray, 55, pleaded not guilty to all 29 charges against him stemming from the 2024 attack that left 2 teachers and 2 students dead in Winter, Georgia. Well, to give us more details on this story, I have with me now Alessandro Marazza Sassoon, and he is an independent journalist in Georgia who's been following the case for the New York Times. Alessandro, good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Can you? I've just given a broad outline there. This has happened This is the 3rd time, hasn't it, that a parent has been found culpable or responsible for the killings. But this is quite a step, isn't it?
It is. I think the 2nd time it's only gone to trial. I think one of those cases involved a guilty plea. But it is a unique and novel legal strategy that prosecutors seem to want to take. And it raises a whole lot of questions, given that you're creating a crime out of something which is a sum of individual actions which individually may not be against the law. For instance, it is not illegal in the state of Georgia for a teenager to have an unsecured firearm in their bedroom. There are states where there is, what's called pediatric safe storage laws, but Georgia is not one of them.
I mean, that is just obviously to a Brit that is quite something, that you can give a teenager a gun, but you don't trust them to drink alcohol.
It's funny you say that, because the prosecutors in their closing arguments on Monday, actually used the analogy of, this is like finding someone guilty because they bought their teenager a six-pack, watched them drink it, and then let them get behind the wheel of a car. And then if they killed someone in an accident, they would be guilty of manslaughter. And while that analogy is striking, what strikes me about it is that it is illegal to buy your teenager a six-pack of beer, but it is not illegal to buy them a gun.
The particular, which is just amazing. It is extraordinary, though, when you dig deeper into this story, that the father, in this case, now guilty of those charges, it's hard not to see that he did have some blame, right?
I'm not one to cast that sort of judgment. A jury of 12 citizens found him guilty on all charges after deliberating for 2 hours and listening to, days of testimony. The evidence that was shown, basically what the prosecution painted a picture of was repeated ignoring of red flags. Evidence that the son had committed self-harm and that he wasn't taken to a psychiatrist. Evidence that the son had in his bedroom, what prosecutors described as a shrine to Nicholas Cruz, who was the shooter in the Parkland school shooting back in 2018. Things that should have made him think, wait a second, what's going on here? Further, though, I mean, a year or so prior to the shooting, he was visited by a sheriff's deputy in the neighboring county, in their other residence, the residence they lived in before they lived in Barrow. And that's because the FBI had given that sheriff's office the tip that there was a Discord handle that was traced to the IP address of their home. And the Discord handle was Lanza, written in Cyrillic characters, Lanza being the last name of the Newton school shooter. So, there was just a lot of things that were missed. And, one of the more striking moments was when the text messages were presented from the daughter, the sister, the younger sister of the shooter, who, when her school went into lockdown, because all the schools in the county went into lockdown once Appalachia went into lockdown, which is where the shooting took place, texted her father words to the effect of, "I think we know what we're both thinking." So there was an inkling of thought, right? And in the closing arguments, the prosecutor said, there's 2,000 students at Appalachia and only one set of parents who thought, hey, maybe it's our kid who did this. And that's a pretty compelling argument.
Do you think this will become more commonplace now that these three cases or two cases have gone through? One, as you say, was a guilty plea, but that this will become more commonplace now, that we will see more parents in the dock?
It's a good question, because I was actually talking about this today with a fellow reporter who I coincidentally had planned to have coffee with, who was herself a survivor of the Parkland shooting.
Wow.
And I was like, what do you think of this case and the parents being blamed? And she recalled that with the Parkland shooting, there was a rush to blame someone, anyone. And in those cases, the school resource officers were put on trial, sort of like with Uvalde later. And the principal was, I think, sued. So, and her view, which I'd like to just share for what it's worth, is that perhaps we are willing to do anything and pursue anyone in the absence of perhaps solving the root problem.
I mean, that makes perfect sense, actually. That would be my assumption as well, or you know, to not do something about the root problem and B, the gun problem, which never seems to go away, does it? What have parents said about this? I mean, because you know, I can't help but think that parents might take more notice of their children. They might be less willing to buy them a gun, and that's a good thing, right? So if there has to be these sacrificial lambs, if you like, that maybe if parents are a bit scared that they could be held responsible, criminally responsible for their child killing people, that they might be more careful.
I mean, I think that's the hope of the prosecutors in pursuing these sorts of cases, is that this deterrent will prevent future school shootings, because parents who notice troubling signs with their children will perhaps take the guns away or not buy them the guns in the first place. That is the hope. As to how parents will react to this, as to whether they will have that thought, I don't know, and I can't say.
I mean, it would be, I'm a parent of a boy. I think it would be really unusual not to go, crikey, that's my responsibility. Although we don't have that problem here. We do have knives, obviously. But what's the legal world saying about this? Because there must be some question, as you said right at the beginning, that is it a crime to buy somebody a gun? No. Is it a crime to be a bad parent? No. So what's the legal world saying about this?
You know, I think a lot of these cases are rather fresh. You know, I think a lot was said after the Crumbly case, and I think a lot of that did have to do with this idea of, well, this will be a deterrent. You know, the legal system, and I'm not an attorney, and so I don't want to speak out of turn here, but the legal system in the United States is complicated and layered, because there's state law and federal law, and there's different districts. So we now have a district here in Georgia, which is part of the 11th Circuit, which is different from from Michigan state law and that federal circuit. So what has happened is a precedent has been created, and we go from there.
So, like we would say here, a test case, a couple of test cases to see if it is prosecutable.
Yeah, and you know, and I think the core part of what the prosecution hinged on was this concept of reckless negligence, right? You know, the father, Colin Gray, was so negligent that it amounts to a crime. You take, I mean, they created a 7-year timeline, with obviously a focus on the days and months leading up to the shooting. All of that to say that, you know, his lack of action was the crime.
But he was prosecuted, found guilty of murder. Is that right? That was one of the charges. Yeah. He was found guilty of murder.
Murder in the second degree.
Murder in the second degree. But we don't have those degrees here, I don't think, anymore. We might have just started.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Oh, okay. So that would be involuntary manslaughter. But again, I think that you would have to have pulled the trigger, or at least handed, been in the school or something like that in this country for that to stand. I mean, just buying a knife and leaving it in the kitchen wouldn't make you guilty of second degree manslaughter.
I think what the prosecution here argued successfully is that, it wasn't just buying a knife and leaving it in the kitchen. Right. It was buying a knife and a knife sharpener and a sheath and knife using lessons, and when he had a collage of pictures and news clippings of knife attacks in his room, you didn't take the knife away from him, or you didn't stop and think what's going on. Because in this case, the father not only bought the weapon and the ammunition, and saw this during the close, something that the prosecutor did that was quite striking was they recreated that wall in Colt's bedroom, which
Right.
had all the images and news clippings of Nicholas Cruz, and held it at the distance it would have been from the bedroom's front door and said, "You can see this, right? This is what he saw every day for X many days and did nothing."
Colt himself is yet to stand trial. Does this prejudice his trial?
It's a good question.
I mean, it has to, right? If his dad's been found guilty of murder or second-degree manslaughter by helping him, then, I mean, look, I'm not going to prejudice anything, but you would imagine that would prejudice a case about the boy. That there's a foregone conclusion there.
You know, already the jury pool for the trial of the father was taken from the adjoining county because it was thought that you cannot find an impartial jury pool within the county because the community is so close-knit. I mean, you know, parents, friends, relatives of the victims were in the audience for many days of the trial, as was the county sheriff. You know, everyone knows each other when we're talking about the community in Georgia.
I'm just fascinated by that legal angle of prosecuting the father first. Anyway, it's good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. A real pleasure. Alessandro Marazza Sassoon, independent journalist in Georgia. Right, stay where you are, because coming up we have the wonderful John Boothman, fresh from Scotland. He's going to be going through the newspapers for us for tomorrow. So he'll be here in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good to have your company. And if you've just joined, some news that broke in the last hour: thousands of Kurdish fighters have begun ground activity inside Iran from areas near the Iraqi border. Israeli and American officials have confirmed that in a development that could open an additional front against Tehran as regional tensions continue to escalate. The Kurdish forces operating along the Iran-Iraq border are considered one of the most prominent armed opposition groups confronting the regime in Tehran. The organisations involved are Iranian Kurdish groups that maintain thousands of fighters, most of whom operate from territory in the Kurdistan region of Iraq along the frontier with Iran. Well, according to Kurdish sources, these forces have been preparing in recent days to participate in ground operations in western Iran with the aim of pressuring Iranian security forces and dispersing them across multiple areas. The strategic concept behind the activity, the sources say, is that fighting along the border areas would force the Iranian regime to divert military and security resources there, potentially easing pressure on protesters and opposition elements in major cities inside Iran. For me, it is interesting that it was the Israelis and the Americans that have confirmed that action has begun, as there have been rumours circulating that the CIA have been helping arm this rebellion. Iran's Tasnim news agency has denied reports, though, of armed Kurdish militants crossing into Iran from Iraq. So, as we know, with these situations, it is incredibly muddled, but it has been confirmed by both Israel and America. But whether those Kurdish militants have come from Iraq into Iran or were already in Iran, we have to yet find out. So that is the latest. Bang up to date with that, and we will bring you more as and when we get it. But in these situations, everything is always completely muddled. Right, coming up at the top of the hour, it is your chance to talk back. And I do want to look at this fractious relationship that we now appear to have with the United States of America. Donald Trump, of course, no fan of Keir Starmer at the moment, and no fan of of Spain either. But certainly no fan of Keir Starmer. Do you worry what that will do to us in the future? Are you concerned about our special relationship apparently crumbling before our eyes? And Keir Starmer's doubled down on that. He has said, look, without knowing what the objectives are here, without knowing what the plan is, we're not going to get involved in the offensive action against Iran, but we will be there as a defensive action for our allies. Although, I mean, how embarrassing is that? The dragon. I can't. It won't be there for a week. Could all be over by then. It's embarrassing. What this has done has really exposed us, particularly, and our weakness in defence. To have all of those ships in docks at the same time. I mean, what on earth? I mean, the military, it seems, the military command, not the boys and girls, they're wonderful, but the military command have been sitting on their thumbs, haven't they? They've just been sitting about going, oh, well, it's all right, nothing's going to happen. That's not the point of a defensive force or an attacking force. We're supposed to be ready. And we've known about issues with Russia for 4 years. You'd think that we would have upped our preparedness, if not just for the Russia-Ukraine situation. I'm embarrassed. It's embarrassing. It's just shocking that we're not ready. I just got to read this. Petrie, I think you should join the Labour Party. You'd be a round peg in a round hole. Okay. Have you not heard me talk about the Labour Party? Have you not? Have you not paid attention, Ian, about the Labour Party? They wouldn't want me. They wouldn't touch me, and I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. No, thank you very much. But thanks for the recommendation. They've been paying. If I became an MP, it's 110 grand a year. Thank you for thinking of me, Ian. That's incredibly kind. Right, let me say what's coming up at midnight. I've told you that, so give me a call on that. Are you concerned about our special relationship with America? Do you think that we should go cap in hand to him now? Do you think we should do everything we can to get that relationship back on track? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight. But let me tell you what's coming up now, and that is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, I've long been a critic of the Labour government. I don't know why anyone would think that I'd go and join them. Let's talk about that special relationship if we can. It's not me, it's you. I mean, what's going on here?
Look, I have to say, I think there's been issues up and down with the special relationship for a long time. I think sometimes we like to emphasise that we have such a thing. I'm not sure that for a very long time it's been as important to the Americans as it appears sometimes to us. But, you know, Donald Trump, since he came back in for his second term, has really, well, downgraded the special relationship, if that would be the polite way of putting it. The fact is, you know, I have to say I took some... I was a bit annoyed yesterday when Trump was, you know, putting it around that Starmer was no Churchill. I saw there was one cartoon today which said that Trump's no Roosevelt. But the thing that I find interesting about that is that if you go back over the past year, you know, he made gravely insulting remarks, for example, about not just British troops but other troops and their contribution during the Afghanistan war, which insulted a lot of service people, which I think he kind of rode back from in the end. If anything, in terms, I think Starmer's tried actually very, very hard to at least, you know, accommodate some of the excesses of Trump, and at the same time act as a sort of honest broker, as a bridge between Europe and America. And frankly, well, Trump's just stamping all over it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Keir Starmer sort of placed himself as a bit of a Trump whisperer, right? I mean, they were certainly giving advice to Zelensky. How to manage Trump, how to talk to Trump. And we've seen extraordinary behaviour from people like Mark Rutte, who I will never forgive for calling him daddy. You know, all of that sycophantic sucking up just to keep, you know, Donald Trump on side. He is quite a demanding special relationship friend, isn't he, Donald Trump?
Absolutely. And, you know, if you look at the current situation, you know, what's happened in the course of the past week, it's a pretty legitimate position that's not just Starmer's position, but the position of a whole number of people in a whole number of countries, that certainly the initial strikes against Iran by the Israelis and the United States were against international law. It was a reasonable position to take because of that, and also because of where public opinion probably is in this country and in America. We see from a poll tonight about, you know, the attacks on Iran. So, you know, but of course it doesn't suit Donald Trump, so Donald Trump just decides that he's going to put the boot into everybody else.
And it's interesting you mentioned there the context of the crumbling of this special relation. I mean, we didn't have a special relationship with Joe Biden. He was no fan either. We couldn't get a trade deal through Joe Biden. You know, there was no special little lovely conversations. It was all very polite, but there was nothing special about that relationship at all. And certainly, like I say, Trump has been a difficult partner in a relationship. But if we do look at the context, he has done nothing but slag off Britain quite a lot recently. He, like you said, he attacked our fallen heroes, saying that they were cowards, basically. He threatened to take Greenland. But if we didn't agree, then those tariffs were gonna come back. He's, you know, offended Europe by talking badly about Europe, and there is concern that he has no stock with NATO, and he certainly doesn't support the United Nations. He set up his own peace board, although he might be bored of peace at this stage, but. You know, there's a huge context, isn't there, to look at, and then to say we want to use your bases, but we're not going to tell you what we're doing with them.
Well, you know, we've got to a kind of bizarre state of affairs where he seems to have harsher words for people who are supposed to be his allies, whether that be Keir Starmer, Mark Carney, you know, European leaders, Macron. He's had a go at. He's having a go at Spain at the moment. He's had a go at the Germans. He's had a go at the Danes. When at the same time, he doesn't have those harsh words for a whole number of other people in the world, notably Vladimir Putin. So we're in a very, very strange position. Strategically, you know, it's only a few months since the Americans produced that foreign policy paper, which in effect talked about how Europe, the civilization in Europe was going backwards, and basically, you know, just reaffirmed the America First policy that we're seeing all the time. He himself is spending more time listening in the Middle East to Netanyahu than he certainly is listening to any of the people in NATO, who really should be regarded as his partners. It's a very, very strange state of affairs. I was looking earlier, you know, at some of the stuff he himself has said about wars. He said that there would be, he was the guy that, you know, wasn't going to fight any wars. I think
no regime change, he said. He's not interested in regime change.
To be fair, I'm talking about Petrie just before then, that
right.
there would be no future wars. And you know, he has attacked about 6 or 7 different countries, whether it be, you know, just simple incursions. You know, he went into Nigeria, he's been in Syria, there's a whole number of countries that have been attacked by the Americans. And, you know, this situation that we find ourselves in now is a situation which now involves more than a dozen countries in the Middle East. You know, there's been an attack in Turkey. A drone fell in Turkey tonight. Cyprus as well has been attacked. And at the moment, what appears to be happening is this can only get wider, right, across the whole region. Never mind, you know, the big economic problems that it's already starting to cause. We're already talking about gas prices going up, 500 quid on energy bills, the price of petrol starting to move, how this is going to affect inflation, how there might not be a decrease in interest rates. I mean, this is just, it has really, if we're going to be honest about it, it's destabilised most of the world.
The thing that it has done, John, I was saying that in my talk-up, is that it has exposed really how unprepared this country is. And in fact, I would say most of Europe as well. It has exposed us as being incredibly weak, incredibly vulnerable. I mean, if there was an enemy out there thinking, right, time to attack Britain, I mean, what have we got? A couple of slingshots and a bow and arrow, possibly.
Look, I mean, part of that is basically that for what? How many decades have we been totally over-reliant on basically American power?
Well, at least 7 or 8, yeah.
Well, no, but much longer than that. I mean, we're talking about really going back a good number of decades. And it is certainly the case that we have progressively reduced the amount of money that we spend on defence. That, you know, I do think it is a bit rich, to be honest, of Kemi Badenoch to stand up and describe Starmer and of being weak, etc., 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 when we've had 14 years. I mean, was there a year in any year that the amount of money spent on defence in this UK under the Conservative government actually rose rather than went down? I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is something that we were too reliant on the Americans. We sort of thought we could get away with. And then the Americans, you know, basically pulled the rug from underneath our feet. And as you say, we are left kind of naked in the conference chamber, defenceless almost.
Yeah.
It takes us a week to get a boat. You know, this stuff about... HMS Dragon. I mean, you know, I could have sat here a week ago and told you that it was clearly the case that, you know, that preparations were more than being made for something happening in the Middle East, and somehow or other, you know, it will be another week before we can get a boat to go to Cyprus. And
we're having to rely on our French allies and Greek allies to protect us in that area. I mean, it is breathtaking. I mean, to be fair, America did want to be the police of the world for a long time as well. They encouraged us to get fat and lazy and not spend that money, but we shouldn't have listened to them.
Well, you know, we find ourselves now, you know, you see the fruits of all of that. We find ourselves now in a situation that, you know, I was reading the other day somebody suggesting that if they had ballistic missiles, that somehow or other they could reach Britain, and we would have nothing to stop them.
Yeah, we would have nothing to stop them. I mean, that is and even during nuclear tests in recent years, they failed. So I mean, we're not even. It is terrifying. I mean, I'm laughing because I can't believe how bad it's got. But this has completely exposed this country, and if something isn't done, we are in deep trouble.
But what we shouldn't pretend is that this is wholly and utterly the fault of the current government.
No, absolutely
it's been going
not.
on for years.
No, this goes on for decades. Actually, I mean, when I worked with the military, there was always drawdowns, cutbacks, regiments being gone, you know. This has been going on since I was in my 20s, for goodness sake. That is a long time ago. So yeah, that's been going on. That's been happening for a very, very long time. John, thank you very much indeed. Going to take a quick break, but John and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. Ian, you're such a sweetie. I don't know whether you're listening properly. You're saying that I did a U-turn. Anybody who's listened to this programme, I mean, from day one I said that Keir Starmer wouldn't last this entire his premiership, and now you're agreeing defences are useless. Yeah, I have worked with the military, like I said, for decades, Ian, and I have been saying that for a very long time. So, but thank you. Every time you text, you help with my wage packet. So I have to be grateful. Send more. Send more. Anyway, let's get on with the papers now. And John Boothman is with me to talk through the front pages. John, the Times, allies round on weak UK. The Cypriot Commissioner criticised Britain's defence of the island because, of course, Cyprus don't want any part of this, right? They just happen to have those two bases on it.
Yeah, RAF Akrotiri, very important to Britain, has been, is in the Mediterranean, and for basically finding out what's going on in the Middle East.
In the Middle East, it's very important.
Yep,
yeah.
Very, very important base, has been for a while. I mean, this story telling us that not just the Cypriot High Commissioner, but the authorities in Bahrain are very critical of exactly the kind of things that we are talking about. The fact that, you know, we don't have a presence. It's taken too long for things to happen. Both of them expected more and have been very concerned about the UK's response. I'm sure, you know, given the criticism we've heard from Trump, that this will make quite difficult reading, I think, for people in number 10 Downing Street. So I think, you know, a very, very interesting aspect. And, you know, we've already touched on HMS Dragon and another week to get it going. You know,
it's just shocking.
Wars happen in real time, not a week after.
Yeah, and all of the senior military lot should be hauled to number 10 and asked what the hell they've been doing, frankly. Because like I said, I don't blame the boys and girls, the men and women of the armed forces. They are an extraordinary and wonderful bunch of people that I worked with for many, many, many years. But the command structure, what is going on?
Yeah, you know, again, you know, it has to be said that, you know, Britain has been given some support to Ukraine, for example. I mean, it's not that I'm not talking about direct military support, but, you know, I think, you know, a lot of eyes have been in Ukraine and on the Russian border for a long time. Now, OK, this has all happened very suddenly, but the signals and the signs have been there for a very long time. You know, after what happened in Gaza, you know, we saw, you know, all of those attacks, including attacks in Iran last year. And it's certainly the case that Trump's been making noises about Iran for a while.
Yeah, well, also in all those meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu. Just, you know, we knew something was up, right? Because they were meeting. This is a fascinating story at the bottom of the page here. Labour MP's husband is held on suspicion of spying for China. Just when Keir Starmer thought he couldn't get any worse.
Well, yeah, funnily enough, I had the same conversation in a Scottish context today, and asked Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, there's elections in 9 weeks, and, you know, the guy's actually been quite effective locally, in Scotland anyway, in terms of, you know, attacking the SNP in a number of fronts, and he just can't get a break. You know, today there was a couple of stories in the Go to his advantage. They had an opinion poll, they were doing quite well. There was a situation in the SNP where one of their candidates had to resign as a result of being investigated over fiddling Social Security money, interestingly enough. And then this story blows up. Scottish Labour MP's husband, who has been was a lobbyist and is now in charge of a senior official in a think tank called Asia House, along with two other guys, gets arrested on suspicion of spying for the Chinese. She's a very interesting woman. Joni Reid first was a London councillor, a Scottish woman, elected at the last general election with a 9,000 majority. She's the granddaughter of Jimmy Reid, the famous shipbuilding trade union leader from the early 1970s who led the work in at the Upper Clyde shipbuilders. So she came in carrying some reputation. Yeah. Now, of course, it has to be said that she said she today released a statement, and all of the stories about this are carrying this statement saying she took no part in her husband's business activities. She doesn't, she said, have any dealings on China or know anything about China, has never met anybody from China, and so on and so forth.
I think that's known as throwing your husband under the bus, isn't it?
You could say that. I couldn't possibly comment. You know, so she made a, you know, pretty strong statement about that. You know, there's certainly talk around about whether or not she might end up being suspended, though, as I say, this is her husband, and she's made her statement today. But pretty fascinating story.
Yeah, really interesting to see how that breaks down.
Two other people involved, though, got to be said. Two other people, I think one of them, at least the partner of a former MP. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, look, we have to let the law do its job now, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this. You know, at a time where we're always talking about China spies, and they've just got permission to build a big embassy in London, so it'll be interesting to watch that. The Daily Mail also going big on that. Labour ensnared in China spy probe, a big story there. And of course the Iran war flashpoint as Trump submarine torpedoes Iranian warship, the first time that has happened since the Second World War.
I've been very interested. I heard Pete Hegseth saying that today, the first time that a submarine had been... everybody clearly in America either didn't know or has forgotten about a ship called the Belgrano, which was well known to us, which I think, if memory serves me correctly, may have been in 1982. This has caused a bit of a row. I think this happened in international waters and appears to have drawn yet another country into the ambit of this war, because it happened off the coast of Sri Lanka, where this boat was taking part in an exercise, and 87 people, I think, was the number that I read, have been killed as a result.
Yeah, that'll certainly raise a lot of questions, although, I mean, the American regime will probably say, well, all's fair in love and war. We had the opportunity, we seized it, and we destroyed a ship that wasn't a threat to us. I mean, it was, like you said, near Sri Lanka. But they will see that as a fair strike.
Well, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, all's fair in love and war is a somewhat mild way of putting it. If you listen to both Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, he said today that, what was it, that Iran is toast, he said. And he said, what we are doing here is we are punching them when they are down, and they are making no apologies for it.
He seems a bit fond of war, Pete Hegseth. Seems to quite get excited about it. That always worries me. I like people involved in war who don't like war, who are doing their best to stop it rather than get excited about it.
I think for a guy, I think, was he a television presenter?
Yeah. I could be the Defence Secretary here any day now. I'm
sure you could.
Actually, I probably know more certainly about geopolitics anyway. So, yeah, the Financial Times as well has gone with US broadens war on Iran to the high seas. But, of course, so much finance is carried out on the high seas, not least the Strait of Hormuz, which everybody's watching very, very keenly. I mean, particularly Japan. Apparently, Japan have got enough oil for 8 or 9 months. And if they don't get, you know, if that isn't replenished, you could see Japan collapse, economically collapse. I mean, that is just, when you start to look at our fragility in this world, there's another example.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, this, we've talked about, you know, the defence consequences, all this. The economic consequences of all of this are absolutely horrendous. I mean, we're already talking about, you know, there's been a price, there's been a 100% increase, I think it is, in the wholesale price of gas. We're already talking about, from July, 500 quid being added to gas bills, I think. You know, there's some panic at the petrol pumps all around the country because everybody's expecting, you know, the petrol prices to go up. It's interesting, you know, one of the angles that the FT's been talking about is it's caused complete and utter havoc in the insurance industry, which is a big part of what we do here in London.
Yeah, some insurance companies have pulled insurance away from boats that are waiting to go through the Straits of Hormuz. So they're not going anywhere because they're worth billions or millions and millions of pounds. And so they've just pulled it. They've just said, no, we're not insuring you now.
This is horrendous, right? Yeah. And again, all of these things, we sit and see these things on the television, and we see submarines being sunk and bombs being dropped and people appearing on television. I saw some stuff earlier about the Kurds, Iranian Kurds, going into Iran, and we think this is all very far away. This has huge, huge consequences for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, and not least of which those Gulf countries, the GCC, because they don't have water. I mean, that'll be the next attacks will be on the desalination plants. That's what I would do if I was Iran. Not that I want to give them any tips, but I'm sure they've thought of it, because that would scupper them. Saudi Arabia is running out of storage space for oil. So it's going to have to cut production. That has a massive impact on prices. Although, interestingly, I noticed before I came into the studio this evening that there's been a stabilisation of oil and gas prices just at a time when you thought that they would absolutely skyrocket. So the markets know something that we don't know. But when it looks like, cutting production because you've run out of storage space because you can't get the stuff around the world, that starts to back up, and that becomes a problem for a long time.
Well, look, a lot of this stuff that's going on is, partly has been caused, I think, because of the lack of clarity about what the objectives and all of that here are here. You've
agree with that.
It's regime change. It's people are going to rise up and take over the country. Well, no, it's actually just about ballistic missiles and nuclear missiles and degrading their military and leaving the people who are currently in charge, or what is it, right? And because of, the nature of all of that, we don't know whether this is going to last, 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months, or 4 years, right? I heard somewhat disquietly, I was disquieted tonight to hear one American expert talk about how this wasn't like Venezuela and decapitating a leadership. This was more like Iraq. Right, and the more I see tonight, we thought this was going to be an air war and a war conducted from the sea. It might be different. I just wonder if you look at the situation all around all the other states where the Israelis, often backed by the Americans, have intervened, whether that be Lebanon or Syria or Iraq. What has tended to happen in each of these countries, though, for different reasons, is that the countries have ended up weaker and fragmented. There's been civil wars in each of the countries.
Exactly. Look at Libya and everything. Everything we touch in that region, it's not the same. And I think that's what Western military and Western thinking doesn't understand. It is not the same. These people don't think the same. They are different to us. They plan things differently. They do things differently. They think things differently, and so they run wars differently. And it is so much more guerrilla style than we are used to the polite sort of wars of old. John, we've got to take a quick break, but we will be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Petrie, and this is Talk, and we're talking about the papers. With me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, I've skipped over The Guardian because it has an almost identical front page to the Times. In fact, I thought for a minute it was the Times, but anyway, they've gone with exactly the same stories in exactly the same place and exactly the same picture. And although the story is similar on the Metro, the picture is extraordinary. I mean, hats off to the picture editor here. And I'm sorry for those of you who aren't watching this. Let me describe it to you. It's two little children playing next to a missile buried probably 3/4 of the way into the ground. This must have been shot down. It certainly didn't impact the ground as a bomb, but it's a huge missile that dwarfs those two children. That is an absolutely, for me, that sums up war completely. It's these poor innocent people.
It's a great picture, not least because, you know, this it's completely unexpected. And, you know, so many people in so many places, as we've said already, have been touched by all of this. I think it's a really good front page. It sums up, you know, exactly the sort of themes we are talking about. It goes from the international through to the domestic. It talks about, you know, how Turkey, for example, has had a missile fired at it. It's got a bit there about, you know, the what happened in the Commons, saying that the Prime Minister risked a new rift with the President after he said his plan was not viable, lawful or thought through. I mean, it's a pretty powerful front page.
It really is. And I mean that. Hats off to the picture editor on the Metro, because that to me, with those children just trying to carry on a normal life and playing outdoors, and that enormous missile there that had clearly been shot down, buried into the ground there. Absolutely compelling image. The Sun newspaper goes with, I'm a bit stunned, actually I haven't read this before, with a football story. Greek cops wanted 50k for a Maguire bribe. What's this story?
I'm not really sure about this. I haven't actually seen this myself. I know my recollection is there wasn't there a situation with where there was a fight in the bar.
You're right. You're
yeah.
right. Yeah. This is Harry Maguire refused to pay 50 grand bribe to cops to make his Greek holiday brawl ordeal go away. It was claimed last night. The Man United ace lost an appeal against his 2020 conviction and was handed a suspended 15-month jail term. There you go. So he didn't pay the bribe. Maybe he should have done. Yeah, interesting. Although I don't know why today, right?
Well, why today? Because at least it's different from all the other papers.
Yeah,
you
maybe.
would have thought, right?
Maybe. There was a big Man U game earlier as well, wasn't there?
I'm
Man
not sure
United
tonight.
game.
Was there?
Arsenal.
Yeah.
Oh, they lost 2-1 to Newcastle. Oh, my son will be gutted. Ooh.
All right.
Oh, there we go. Right, the Mirror. Again, a lot of people going with the image of the submarine torpedoing and sinking the Iranian warship. And it is an extraordinary image of the warship, you know, almost like you would imagine the end of the Titanic, just standing upright.
I think people are making a lot of, you know, the submarine seems to have been sunk cold beneath the waterline by this torpedo in a particular position on the submarine, which has meant the devastation was particularly bad. But that's again another powerful picture that some of the other papers have got. The headline there, blown out of the water. So, you know, and you know, papers making the point that, you know, the ship, given that it was in international waters off Sri Lanka, would never have thought this was coming.
Yeah. Well, of course they wouldn't have done. And I mean, I have a particular affiliation. I mean, you know, I was talking to my sister earlier on, and was saying, because we've got a brother who's a naval commander, and I said, oh, you know, people are glorifying the deaths of these innocent men and women that would have been on this ship. And there was then people go, well, they're not innocent. But then my brother, they're just doing a job, right? In a sense, they may be the enemy, but they're no less human. And I think if we dehumanize even the enemy, we dehumanize everybody, and we make our own armed forces dehumanized, right? If they get killed, we're supposed to just go, oh, well, they asked for it because they were in the military.
Well, again, we live in a world at the moment where it is possible, you think, with the sophistications of military technology, to be able to target what are in effect military targets, but somehow or other that doesn't seem ever to happen. And I wish I had a pound for every time. In recent times, for example, I've heard the IDF, the Israeli Defence Forces, saying, "Oh, we don't target civilian casualties." Yet somehow or other, many tens of thousands of civilians have been killed.
Yeah, I mean, and it is an absolute joke. I wish that people would stop saying that. I really do, because war is ugly. It's messy. Mistakes happen, and also if you happen to be right next to, which is a lot of these countries now do, they build their military right in a town so that there are casualties. We saw that in the Iraq war, do you remember, with the milk factories and baby milk factories and things like that. They deliberately do that. So the idea that war is somehow going to leave innocent civilians alive is a lie. It always has been, and it always will be. War will kill indiscriminately. That's what happens.
Well, one of the things, I watched a bit of that Pete Hesketh, the Defence Secretary in the US government, at his press conference today. He was being asked about a girls' school that had been basically the subject of an attack.
Killed 168 girls.
He said they were investigating it and would say nothing other than that. You can't, if you've attacked, I think the Americans have said, more than 1,000 targets in Iran, you can't avoid the possibility that many, many, many civilians are going to be killed.
Always will be. Always have been. And always will be. I mean, look at our hands aren't clean of this either. If we look at what we did to Dresden and places like that, but that's what war is. It is ugly, and innocent people get dragged into it. And that why anybody thinks any differently to that, and there's shock. Oh, innocent civilians have been killed. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? Really? Let's have a look at the other story. MP, I've never suspected my husband. Politician wife defends lobbyist after 3 arrested in this espionage probe, and a little photograph of them on the front page there.
Yeah, we need to see what happens when this goes to court. We've long known about the Chinese, and I heard the Security Minister Dan Jarvis talking in the Commons today, and what the Chinese have been up to in terms of really trying to find out how Britain works, what goes on in our institutions, but not just that. All of the things that we know and we've heard about in terms of trying to be around technology in this country. I just find this really fascinating story that this is so close to really the corridors of power in Britain.
I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, if it bears out, but we do know there are spies. We do know that they are around even in Westminster and everywhere. And this is a really particularly difficult time for the world at the moment. It's incredibly dangerous that these people walk amongst us. Let's take a quick break, John, and we'll come back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me is the fabulous John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, the Daily Express have gone with Kemi Badenoch calling the Prime Minister weak.
Again, you know, I read a really interesting article yesterday in the Telegraph by Tim Stanley, who's one of their commentators, who said that basically he was glad that Starmer was the Prime Minister and not Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch, on the basis that they both would have allowed the Americans without criticism or quarter to go and do whatever they liked. And I found that really, really interesting that would appear in the Daily Telegraph. I found it interesting today that when Starmer does stand up against Donald Trump, whether you agree with him or disagree with him about the initial strikes as he had, saying that they were unlawful, and then making that criticism that, you know, Trump doesn't have a thought-through plan, that Kemi Badenoch should call him weak. So I
mean,
find
the whole world is actually criticizing. Even in America, they're saying, "What's the plan?" to Donald Trump. And it changes, or it changes all the time. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask, what's the plan?
Well, maybe we are seeing, even before the Iraq War, it certainly looked as if there were much more certain reasons for going into Iraq.
Well,
although it turned out that wasn't the case.
It had also been cleared by Congress, the Senate, and the British Parliament. So, there was permission, if you like. It wasn't just this moment. And I think that even Donald Trump is thinking that. Well, he said that he thought this would be over quickly. He's prepared for it to be longer, prepared for it to be weeks, and he's surprised at how quickly it spread around the Middle East.
See, I think this is interesting also because I think Netanyahu may have a plan, but Donald Trump thinks he's got a plan, but he doesn't really. I think, again, to go back to the beginning of the programme, all of this stuff now that we are seeing, Kurdish dissidents, basically Iranians who are Kurdish, going in, which I think will, fragment the country, which I think will take away from the effectiveness of, the current leaders in Iran. Maybe the direction of travel in which we're heading, where, the Israelis would certainly rather see a weak and fragmented country, even if it means that some elements of the current regime are in charge of some part of it.
Yeah, we may see that. We may see a breakdown between the ethnic groups in Iran, I mean, of which Persians are the largest group. But you've got at least 4 or 5 other groups that could start a civil war, and have actually been waiting for the opportunity to do that, and to carve up areas of Iran for themselves. So that is for me the most likely outcome of this.
Yeah, but that takes a long time.
Yeah.
That
takes a lot of war.
Yeah, we're talking about something that's going to last for a long time.
Yeah.
The people who that Trump in particular talks about, he thought that somehow or other the existing authorities would give up, that the ordinary people in Iran would take over the country.
Well, they're just about to elect a new Ayatollah.
Sure, but the ordinary people in the country are the people who are going to end up suffering the most as a result of all of this.
Always.
Whatever way the country is going to be, the country is going to end up. The Americans are now talking about, of course, the next wave of attacks, and saying they're going to be more severe than the current wave of attacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is why I don't sleep. I watch watch news feeds all night and all day and all weekend. I've got to take a break at some point, but I just can't stop looking at it, to be honest with you, and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Well, I mean, look, with a weakened Prime Minister, you're going to get the opposition, you know, pushing him even further down, and this is an open goal, I think, for Kemi Badenoch, because a lot of the public agree that Keir Starmer has been weak on this, and he certainly has been weak on pretty much everything else in the last 18 months. So this is just another opportunity, surely.
Yeah, and there'll be lots more of it in the next few weeks as well.
Yeah.
You know, I keep harping on about, you know, the elections in Scotland, Wales, and in local authorities in England.
Yeah.
These are coming down the track quite fast.
Yeah, they really are. I just can't see how Starmer can survive, and I'm not even so sure that he should. But again, I just don't know who would replace him. One of your stories that I love, and it's on the front page of the Telegraph as well. Ballroom Blitz. Talk me through this story.
I mean, today of all days, this week of all weeks, MPs, as part of some campaign to promote well-being and health, managed to get themselves into a great big photo call in Portcullis House, right at the centre of Westminster, where you had 40 MPs along with Angela Rippon dancing. You know, MPs ain't popular. The world's teetering, you know, on the brink. And here are these pictures, led by Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, of MPs disco dancing, as if that's a very old-fashioned term, I suppose.
It looked a bit more like line dancing to me when I watched it. Yeah,
pretty poor line dancing.
Pretty poor. Anyway, I mean, but it is embarrassing, and it's almost like, oh look, you know, perhaps they're dancing because of the pay rise they're going to get.
It's probably dad dancing might have been a better description of it, to be honest. Right?
But it is embarrassing, and it's what happened to optics? What happened to the whole thing? It's optics, dear boy. You know, it's about how it looks. Think it through. This looks bad. We've got British lives abroad at risk and in peril. You don't start dancing around Portcullis House.
Yeah, poor judgment. I mean, and that's the least you can say about it. And as you say, on top of this idea that MPs are going to get a higher pay rise than kind of lots of people in the public sector. I mean, you know, people just don't like it, right? And MPs' reputations are kind of low enough without this kind of stuff. I mean,
we're talking about the pay rise yesterday. There's £19,000 over this Parliament. Pay rise.
Well, you know...
who else is getting that in the country?
Well, you know, some people don't get £19,000.
No, exactly. And they work full time. None of this 6 weeks holiday and 12 weeks here and, you know, all of that. And that's just their pay. Don't forget their expenses and their second homes as well. I mean, they're loaded. No wonder they don't understand what's going on with the country at large, right?
Crazy position to get into.
But that is ridiculous. And Lindsay Hoyle, just overexcited about dancing with Angela Rippon, who is extraordinary. Bless her. She's looking good, but I mean, goodness me, the rest of them, what a bunch of muppets. And the Guardian. Let's have a look at your Guardian story as well. Trump doesn't care if Iran play at the World Cup. That would be unlikely at this stage, wouldn't it?
Well, the Iranians, looks as if the Iranians have qualified, I think, for the fourth time ever, fourth time in a row, rather. They're due to go and play. I think the Iranians are kind of suggesting that they won't go. Trump
it would be hard to see them there, wouldn't it? It would be...
I can't see the Iranians going, and they'll be replaced, I think, by another Gulf state. I think there's a bigger issue, though, depending... and how this goes on. You know, look at the situation with the Spanish now, for example.
Oh, my goodness, yes, and the Germans.
I recall last, I think it was September, on the back of all the Greenland stuff, that people in Spain were making noises about not going to the World Cup. Now, I'm not going to say that any of this is going to happen, but my point, I suppose, is a more general point, which is... other countries may decide that it ain't a very good idea to go for a World Cup in America. Already FIFA, the football world authorities, have made a bit of a fool of themselves round about some of this. You will recall at the draw for the World Cup finals, they presented Gianni Infantino, the FIFA General Secretary, presented Donald Trump with a specially made trophy, which I think was bigger than the World Cup, which was their first peace trophy. I think we might hear a lot more of this in the next few months, right? That the other possibility, I think, maybe let's see whether I think the Israelis are still have a qualification game still. I think we might hear a wee bit more of.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I was talking to my producer about this a couple of weeks ago, saying this World Cup is looking really, really, really fragile for various geopolitical reasons. So we're keeping an eye on it as well. John, great to speak to you. Next time, if we meet up, we'll have a little dance. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, we'll film it. John Boothman, stay where you are. Talk back next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Talkback, and I am Petrie, in case you're wondering. And I want to talk to you about the fracturing of the special relationship between the United States and Britain, or more appropriately, between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. It seems that we've never been at such a low ebb as we are right now. Look, we haven't had, I say this special relationship has always felt one way, that we're all going, yeah, he loves me. And America's been a bit like, all right, calm down. You're one of hundreds. I'm seeing other people, right? That's the way I've seen our special relationship for quite some time. And certainly under Joe Biden, he was absolutely no fan. His mother hated the English. I mean, literally hated us viscerally. And of course, we didn't get any special treatment from Biden. We didn't get any trade dealing talks with Biden. He was polite, but did not want to know, right? He was not interested in us at all. So it has been quite some considerable time since we had a special relationship. In fact, I think it's been a bit of a lie since after Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. That's where it began, because they genuinely did really like each other. They genuinely had a great relationship, but most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time. So, I mean, she was a bit annoyed with him when he went and bombed a sovereign nation. But anyway, look, I don't think we've really been that special to America for a long time. I really don't. I think between the American people and the British people, there will always be a special friendship, right? Two countries divided by a common language. I think that we do get on. I have no stock at all. I've met a lot of I love Americans. I think they're great people. Dubious about their voting, but I think most of them are absolutely splendid, and I think that we have a good relationship with them. But I don't think, country to country, that we've been seen as any more than just that poodle. We're too small. We're insignificant. We haven't got very much to offer, apart from our financial services, which America needs. So I think that there's not really been that special a relationship, that we have gone on and on about the special relationship, and it almost forced America to agree with us on that. But certainly, since, like I said, with Joe Biden, I think Obama, perhaps we were okay. Again, I don't think it was particularly close, but we were okay. Biden, definitely not. And now Donald Trump, who plays favourites and falls in and out of love like a teenage boy, and will like you 1 minute if you're giving him a letter from the King that invites you to a special day out, and then start having a go at you, the second you leave the room. I just don't think that we have been that special, and I don't see why we should be either. I just don't think it has been special for a very long time. However, many people believe that we are better with Donald Trump, we are better with America than we are with Europe, certainly, or at least we're better with America than being on our own, right? And there is that fear now that if we fall out with America, which I don't think will happen, I don't think that'll happen, but if this becomes catastrophic, then what next? What do we do as a country if we're no longer significant to America? If they look at us, and look, we know Pete Hegseth looks at us with contempt. J.D. Vance looks at us with contempt. You can't take the snarl off their faces. I don't see where this special relationship is. If you can prove me wrong, tell me where this special relationship is. Tell me what this special relationship has got us. Tell me that the lovely, fluffy moments that we've had. I don't see it. I don't. And like I said, I haven't for a very long time. But what do we do as a country if we're no longer even think we're special friends? Right? We are too small. We're too insignificant. What do we do on our own? We can't be on our own. So do we now repeat, rinse and repeat, sucking up to Donald Trump to try and get him to be our friend again? Even with all of the context of the last year, denigrating our fallen heroes, saying, oh, they stayed off the front lines. I mean, that was disgusting. That was one of the most vile things that you could say, especially to the families who lost those people. Oh, they were cowards. They weren't on the front lines. And he didn't apologise about that, so don't bother telling me he apologised. He didn't apologise. He went, oh, yeah, no, the British soldiers, they were there. But he didn't say sorry. And also there were Danish soldiers as well that were on the front. I mean, so the context of it. Also, slagging off Europe all the time, slagging off Britain all the time, going on about Greenland. and Denmark is a NATO country, we're a NATO country, and saying they're going to take Greenland. All of those things, and also Canada. Don't forget Canada. Canada, which is part of the Commonwealth, that has the same king as us. You know, threatening to make them the 51st state. So there's a wider context here about the breaking down of this special relationship. But I want to hear from you. Do you believe that we really do have this special relationship with America, and we should do everything we can to get back in Donald Trump's good books? That we should do everything and anything he wants us to do? I mean, it just sort of reminds me of a dumped person begging to come home. The power balance is never there if you have to beg to go back, right? Which is a lot of people's argument as to why we couldn't ever go back to the EU. Right? We dump them, and then we're going to go, can we come back, please? They're going to make our lives hell. So I don't know. What do we do now? Do you think it's fractured beyond repair? Do you think that there's a way out of this? Do you think that we need to start forming alliances elsewhere? Do we have to go this middle power that certainly France has been talking about? And band together with other middle powers? I don't know what the answer is. But I am not convinced that our relationship has been special with America for a very, very long time. Not on the world stage, not geopolitically. Personally, yeah, why not? But no. So give me a call. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you straight back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Looking forward to hearing from you. I got this from Matt. He says, I'm old-fashioned, but spying is an incredibly serious offence, isn't it? Oh, yeah, I didn't get much more serious, to be honest with you. And in terms of the fragile geopolitical condition, if we can bring ourselves to accept that international law cannot protect us against the lawless, we might find our footing. And Matt also says, the PM stands up when he should sit and sits when he ought to stand. If Trump is in the eye of the storm, the only still point is alongside him, isn't it? It's an argument. It depends if that eye of the storm is dragging you into something that you're not going to get out of for years, I guess. But it is an argument. It is an argument. In an unsafe world, are we better standing next to Donald Trump and sucking up to him and making things right, rather than you know, if it is what he's doing is making us, you know, he's standing up to his principles, maybe we can't afford those principles. Maybe we can't afford those principles. We just have to do what America says. We have to always do what America says. Otherwise, we're out in the cold. And I don't like the sound of that, of doing always what America says. That makes us not a partner. That's not a relationship. That's abuse, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Brian has called from Whitley Bay. How are you, Brian?
Oh, hi. Petrie, I just think, right, if we went in there, everybody will be criticising the Labour Party again, you know, like they did with Tony Blair when he went into Iraq. And let's be honest, I mean, we've got open borders in this country, and if we start attacking Iran, you know, we will be getting a lot of bad people coming across here, you know, conflicts and all sorts going on, and terrorist attacks and all sorts. I think we should stay well clear of it. Let the Americans and the Israelis do what they want to do. To what, you know, I'm glad the ISL has gone, by the way. You know, I'm not on the side of that.
Nobody with a brain cell is on the side of that regime, really. I mean, it was brutal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I've just heard on your station tonight about the Kurds have gone across there, this country will end up getting fractured into bits. So, I mean, Iran will not probably be one nation. It's going to be like, you know, there'll be different factions fighting for different regions out there. Do you know what I mean? And it's going to be broken up. And obviously we don't want that because obviously, it's just going to cause chaos, isn't it?
Yeah,
really,
the more unstable Iran is, the worse it is for the world, and that's why I've from day one of this have been cautious about it and said, look, this is, yes, this regime had to go. I don't know any other way of making it go, to be honest with you. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but it's what they leave behind, and we have a really bad track record of going into the Middle East, bombing it, causing chaos, continuing with the chaos, and then just abandoning it. And that is what I worry is going to happen to Iran, because I don't care about the regime, but I care about the people of Iran, who are incredibly brave. The British people wouldn't be half as brave, quarter as brave as the Iranian people have been with this regime. And I admire them. And I worry, like you're saying, with a civil war that could rage on for years, that it is those people who will suffer. Meanwhile, the likes of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, who will be tucking into a McDonald's at tea time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're miles away from the conflict, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just...
Well, Israel is closer, but certainly America is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I heard about the regime going into hospitals, killing nurses who were treating the wounded who were protesting,
Yeah, that's exactly... yes, I heard that as well, and doctors.
That was, unbelievable, do you know what I mean? And, and do you know, I want to say one more thing as well about this. Those people who are doing a rally, on behalf of the Ayatollah Khomeini's, the guy who's died, they should not be allowed to do that. It's just extreme and it's dangerous, and I think it will cause conflict in our streets. There'll be people mass brawling each other. Do you know what I mean?
There will be counter protests, I'm sure. Yeah. And I think that given the circumstances in the world, that it should be cancelled this year, postponed this year. Absolutely, I do. But it's so frightening to think of the mess that we, and when I say we, I mean the West, is going to leave Iran in, because Donald Trump could pull the plug any minute and say, right, that's it, job done. We've done our bit. Now it's over to you. And then what?
And one more thing as well, Petrie, our armed forces have been depleted over the years. Oh. I mean, we haven't got any... I remember the Falklands War, we had HMS Invincible, HMS Hermes, different people... Well, different, aircraft carriers, different aircraft carriers. Our Navy, the armed forces, the Army and the Air Force, they've cut backs all over the place, and there's hardly anybody joining up anyway now. So, we haven't really got proper, armed forces in this country now.
No, we don't have a pot to pee in. I mean, this has exposed us as being incredibly weak. It is embarrassing. It is absolutely embarrassing. And you talk about those great ships. I've been on board Invincible, actually. Mm-hmm. I got helicoptered out to Invincible when it was just off Serbia. But these things are so dramatically fantastic. They are extraordinary beasts to get close up to, these things. But we've let it all turn to rot. All of our Defender boats, ships are being fixed. And we've only got 8 of them as it is.
Yeah, and another thing I know is, this bit of conflict that's been going on with Afghanistan and Pakistan. That's quite worrying. And all if there's something goes off there's another conflict in in that part of the world. And Pakistan's got nuclear weapons, and so is India. So that is a bit worrying as well. If it spreads across to them parts, to their areas as well.
But that isn't one of those I'd say unforeseen consequences of war, but it is actually foreseeable. Is that when the world is obsessing in one area of the world, then there's an opportunity for other areas of the world to kick off without observation. And that happens all the time. And my concern is China now, who is seeing the ticking off the weapons as they're fired by America, right, and knowing that that's depleting stocks. And while our attention is in the Middle East, is this the time that they try to take Taiwan? Because this is the way it spreads, right? It's not just the war that is happening; it's what people try to get away with while we're all looking in another direction, and that's how these things spread.
you know, the people of Ukraine as well, the huge, you know, the huge problems in Ukraine. You know, I think about Ukraine every single day. The people out there are amazing people, and I just, you know, I hope somewhere along the line that, you know, that, and obviously I'm dreaming here, but, you know, I just hope that the war out there will end. Well, you know, the invasion will end, and Russia will. I don't know what's going to happen out there, but it's terrible to know.
Putin couldn't be happier
No,
now because the Western the thingy of the willing, whatever it's called, I can't remember. I'm so but the coalition of the willing and America now are not going to be keen on giving Ukraine or selling Ukraine any air defence weapons because they need them themselves. So that is again my worry for Ukraine, is that their stocks are going to deplete because the rest of the world is going to say, well, hang on, we can't afford to give them to you now. Because we might need them. So that is also my worry for Ukraine. I mean, these are the things, of these knock-on effect, the ripple effects of what's going on in the Middle East are extraordinary.
Yeah,
like
thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, bless you, Brian. Thank you very much. Right, I've got to take. Oh, Mark says, Mark in Northampton, you're obsessed with Trump. I don't care what happens. How can I talk about the special relationship with America without mentioning Trump? And how can we talk about the war that's going on at the moment without mentioning Trump? I mean, come on, Mark. Ridiculous. What do I call him? The T word? I mean, what do you want me to do? I don't know what to do. I can take a break while I think about it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, sorry, I'm just laughing at some of the comments. A very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you, and this is Talkback, and this is your chance to do exactly that. We're talking about the so-called special relationship between America and Britain. And do we really believe that our relationship is that special? Or have we always been America's poodle? That's what, I mean, I remember the front pages from years ago. It was on The Sun. They had this image of Britain as a poodle to America. And it's always stuck with me. I think it was probably The Sun because it was a cartoon. But anyway, it's always stuck with me, and I've been looking at this so-called special relationship and just trying to figure out when it's ever really benefited us. I mean, when it came to tariffs, we got the same ones as the Taliban. We got 10%. There didn't seem to be. It wasn't that special. There wasn't like, oh, you're Britain, we love you, come here, give you a hug. Well, we'll keep yours a bit lower. So I'm not sure how special is anymore. And is it time that we face up to that? Is it time, that point where when you're in a relationship and you just think, hang on a minute, is this still working? Is this still what we want? Is this still what we need? And maybe we're coming to that point. And maybe that's being forced on us by the regime in America, really having a lot of contempt for us. I mean, they literally can't take the snarl off their faces when they talk about us. Just look at J.D. Vance, Mr. Eyeliner. I mean, he just always putting us down. And Pete Hegseth as well, Kegsbreath. He as well, he can't stop sneering at us. It doesn't feel that special, right? So, and Donald Trump now. I mean, look, do I think Keir Starmer's weak? Yes, I think he's proved that. Time and time again over the last 18 months. But it was interesting earlier on today, though, when a lot of people were saying, oh, Keir Starmer's trying to go for the Muslim vote by appeasing the Muslims, etc., etc., etc. I can't answer to that. But what I can say is the question didn't appear to being asked, that could it be that Keir Starmer keeps repeating that we weren't part of the offensive on Iran to prevent terror attacks on British soil? Could it be that when he's spoken to the Muslim community and he says, look, I just want to say we were nothing to do with the offensive, that what he's doing is trying to get that message out to say, what was it, in the last 5 years, 20 attempts have been made on this soil that have been thwarted by MI6, by Iranian dissidents, by Iranian terror cells. Is he trying to say we weren't part of that offensive to stop terror attacks on this soil? I don't know. I can't answer to that either. And I am no fan of Keir Starmer, and I suspect if he has done that, he's done it accidentally. But could that be the reason he keeps repeating that? It's a question worth asking, isn't it? I mean, not everything is black and white. Not everything is one-sided. And certainly on this programme, I try to look at both sides, even if I don't like either of them. So that was just a question that occurred to me, that perhaps that's why he keeps repeating that. Could be, couldn't it? I don't know. Well, I have met the man. God, dull. But I don't know him. I don't know what he's thinking. Thank goodness I don't know what's in his head. I don't want to know. Thank you very much. But do I agree he's weak? Yes. And do I also think that this country is weak? Yes. And it has never been more obvious than right now, when we've scrabbled together one ship that isn't even ready to leave for a week. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. But believe me when I tell you, this degradation of the British Armed Forces has been happening for decades. I know because I've covered it. I've read the white papers. I've seen what they're doing to regiments and the cutting of numbers. I've seen the way they treat the armed forces, why people are leaving, and I don't blame them, because they're treated horribly in terms of housing and things like that. This has been going on for a long... This is way more than Keir Starmer, who's only been in for 18 months. Let me remind you of that. I mean, I know it feels like longer. But repeated governments have failed us. And this is where it becomes obvious, is looking at that ship, the Dragon, sitting in port. It's embarrassing. Not even ready to leave. I don't know what the hell's been going on. Well, I do know what's been going on, but it's now so obvious how weak and pathetic a country we have become. So do we need to suck up to Donald Trump for protection? You tell me. 0344 499 1000. Tonya is in Devon. Good morning, Tonya.
Hi, how are you? Okay?
I'm all right, thank you. I hope you're good this morning. What do you think of our special relationship with the US?
I don't think there's words to describe what I think about that. We've always been the puppy dog, and we can continue to do that if we want, and continue being puppy. I just, as an aside, you just reminded me actually that there was another ally of ours in the Second World War. Do you remember who that was in the Second World War? Our other ally apart from America.
Well, I think they sort of all were, weren't they?
Yeah, Yeah, who was our big ally that lost so many people in the Second World War? More people than
Russia.
Yes. It's funny, isn't it? The Russians, they did so much. We wouldn't have won the Second World War without the Russians. And yeah, they're now the big bogey bear. So I just, I personally, my take on it is they're all friends behind the scenes. But and the little people are the real enemy. We're the real enemies. The 99% are the ones they really hate. But yeah, the whole thing, I don't know. I don't believe in bombing Iran. No, I don't. I think it's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. What I don't believe in is leaving the country in a mess after they've finished. That's what I don't believe in. I can understand the reasons for bombing Iran. I totally get it. I think that it would have been completely perilous and unacceptable for Iran to continue developing their cruise missiles, and any chance of a nuclear weapon. It would have been disastrous for the whole world. I can firmly believe that they are a terror organisation. The whole regime, the biggest exporters of terror in the world. They needed to be stopped. That I agree with.
But how do you define terror? Because wouldn't you? I mean, I seem to think that couldn't America be described as a terrorist organisation?
Well, I suppose it depends who you can see that they're, bombing different countries. But I don't know whether I don't know whether they export terror in the same way that Iran does. With their proxies around the world and their terror cells, wanting. Look, they've called we're little Satan. America is big Satan. Iran hates Britain, or the regime hates Britain. And given the opportunity and a nuclear bomb, I have absolutely no doubt that they would bomb us. I have no doubt about that. Iran had to be stopped.
And where does that hate come from then? That Iran hates us? Why would Iran hate us? If we look at history, why would they hate us so much?
Well, I mean, there's lots of anti-West sentiment, and I suppose when you're looking at the West, you would look and see Britain and America as being established flags for that. But there's all sorts of historical reasons, but it's also cultural, religious. The West, they hate us. We've stolen stuff from them. We've messed up their country in the past.
Yeah.
When they tried to nationalise oil, that's when America went in and removed the Shah and then replaced the Shah. We've messed around with them.
Haven't we? We do interfere in the Middle East, and I do wonder, perhaps maybe if we want to step back and have a little think about ourselves and how we're not so perfect as we might sometimes think we are, and I don't say we in this, actually. I say we, but I don't consider myself part of them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm completely disenfranchised. There's nobody that I would ever vote for in this country. This is my land, but the state does not stand for me, and it's never stood for me or anything that I believe in. So I've lived in the Middle East. I probably feel quite an affinity to the Middle East, actually. I was born in the Middle East, but either way, I can see both sides and the reasons. Now, by going into Iran, so if we look at the mess we've made in Iraq, if we look at the mess we made in Afghanistan, because we want to control the resources, whether it's opium, oil, or minerals, why do we think that going into Iran is going to do anything more than create a bigger mess and more so-called terrorists of the future who will just be... rightfully, why wouldn't you? If someone was bombing me, I'd probably be radicalized and want to get back at their country. So are we not going to just create more young radical people in Iran who are going to be very angry? I mean, they don't like their little girls and children being killed. What are we trying to achieve? Because this is not, it's a long-term plan. They've wanted to go into Iran for a long, long time. This has been going on since the plan for the new American century. They wanted to go into Iran. This is not an accident. This has been planned for a long time.
No, and of course Benjamin Netanyahu wants it just wiped off the map. But to be fair, Iran has been saying that it wants to wipe Israel off the map. So, I think that we have to look at this in context as well of what happened when Article 5 was triggered and we went into support America in the Middle East, and how many years we spent embroiled in that, how much money we spent embroiled in that. We've also got the situation in Libya with Gaddafi and the civil wars that happened after that. And then the breakup of the country. We have an incredibly bad reputation for trying to affect regime change. I mean, we put Saddam Hussein in that job and then ended up trying to take him out of it. So, you know, it doesn't work, and we shouldn't be involved in it. But I do agree that Iran, this regime in Iran, you know, needed to be stopped from getting the weapons that it was attempting to get. The worry that I have is just them saying, right, we've bombed you now, we're off. That's what worries me, because that's when you see civil war, and that's when you see innocent people being slaughtered, but in bigger numbers than they were by the regime.
Then do you think that they're playing out, because it seems to me that they're yet again, as has happened in many times history, that Revelations is being played out deliberately. The Book of Revelations, and don't get me wrong, I'm not...
The end of times?
Yeah, well, yeah, as I say, it's the end of an era, because it's played out many times in history. I mean, Nero was the Antichrist, etc., etc., but I do think that there's some... To me, it looks like they're deliberately... We're in the middle of the Agenda 2130, which is the 10-year plan, which started with the COVID scamdemic, which was a total scam. And this 10 years as part of United Nations...
So you don't believe people died of COVID?
I believe people died because the government locked down and mucked up the care system and shoved people back into care homes and lots of other things.
But they died of something.
And people, as they do every year, they died of various respiratory diseases and flu and stuff like that, which could be labelled
not in those numbers. We part company on that, but
well, we can agree to disagree. But
yeah, we can agree to disagree. We very much part company on the COVID the thing, but I think that look, if we leave, there was something that happened today which I found absolutely fascinating, and I was watching this play out again in America, and there's been about 100 servicemen and women in America who have complained about their leaders, the senior officers, in some cases saying that this war in Iran is biblical.
Yes.
It is the end of times, and Donald Trump was put here by Jesus to bring about the end of times in order for Jesus to come back to earth. And when the military are saying that to soldiers, I think that is bizarre. That is completely bizarre.
Well, you think about the four horses of the apocalypse, and the white horse is pestilence and disease, which you could see as COVID, whether you believe it or not, but you can still that's symbology, yeah. And then you got what's the next one? The red horse, I think. It's the horse of war. So we would be about on schedule for the red horse at the moment. I mean, I just got out my Bible, actually, because I'm not a Christian, but I'm really interested in the code and the symbology in the Bible and the astrology.
Yeah, I mean, look, these things were written by men, not by God.
Exactly.
There might have been a bit of hyperbole there, a bit of drama. To keep people interested. So I don't believe it any more than I believe in Harry Potter stories, just where I'm no disrespect to anybody, but that's my belief system. So I'm more likely to believe that he who should not be named will rise than any of that. But, you know, it is being spoken about in the US, which is fascinating.
Well, do you think? I mean, there is code. Believe me, there is a massive astrology and code in the Bible. I mean, the stories are for little people, for us, the peasants, but the code behind it, you know, as in the knowledge handed down, which they wrote into code, is very interesting. It's not just the Bible, it's all the other, you know, mythical and religious texts. But I just had a quick look at Daniel, and it's interesting how it mentions the book of Daniel describes four beasts representing four kingdoms: Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece. Now, Persia, of course, is Iran, isn't it?
Iran, yeah.
Greece, well, it's funny about Cyprus, isn't it? Babylon is Iraq, but they've already messed that one up. Where's Media? I can't remember. Do you know which Media is Manal today? Media? I can't remember what Media is today.
It must be around Egypt, I would have thought.
Perhaps, yeah.
Medina?
Media, Media, Media. I'm not sure which area that is today, but it was Media back then. I forget. But it'll be in the Middle East somewhere, in that area somewhere.
Look, there's no doubt about it, Tonya. We are in really scary times. The ripple effect of this war in the Middle East, nobody knows where that's going, right?
No.
It is because war is not always predictable. And
no.
But one thing that is
It's
predictable,
crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
yeah, the one thing that is predictable is that innocent people always die, and it seems to be a price that as humans, as a human race, we're prepared to pay to keep chucking bombs at each other, and I do not understand it. I would have thought we'd have...
The little boys with their little toys.
Yeah, and the money. Or follow the money. I mean, you know, Trump's got a meeting with all the manufacturers of defence weapons this week to try and talk them into speeding up the process. And they're rubbing their hands with glee. They can't. Every time a defence weapon goes off, they're going, right, that's another $3 million. That's another, you know, to build another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say about the women in Iran, I would say as well that, yeah, sure. I mean, personally, I'm in when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I don't think that we have the right to tell other cultures what to do, and that's their business. But even if you did say we have a right to tell Iran how to run their culture, or Afghanistan how to run their culture, which I don't believe we do, but let's say we do, right? Because I'm sure there's lots of things about our culture that they could criticise, right? What about Saudi then? Saudi culture and Iranian culture are very similar. Saudi women and Iranian women have very similar status. So why are we so, oh God, let's worse the women in Iran terrible, but the women in Saudi, that's fine.
Actually, the women in Saudi, it is beginning to change.
But there's lots of similarities.
Well, there certainly have been in the past, and there is slavery, of course, and things like that as well to consider. Listen, I don't understand what men are so scared of. Why are men so scared of women?
Well, they are scared of women.
They are
terrified of women.
That's why they have to subjugate us.
Stupid little war games.
Yeah.
You know, we don't do it. They are absolute. These are not men. Yeah. They are stupid little boys.
I agree. I completely agree.
Toddlers. And as women and animals and dogs and nature, we need to stand up to these stupid little boys. And don't say, listen, I can't stand Keir Starmer. I think he's an absolute piece of... I don't even want to say what I think of him. But on this... And he's standing on the fence. He's not going one way or the other. But if he went the way against war and did the opposite of Tony Blair, I would be supporting him. You know, he needs to stand up properly, not do it half and half and pretend to. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. That's what makes him look weak.
You know what I'm saying? He's weak. Yeah, just do it. Well, stand one way or the other, not on the fence, mate. But these stupid little boys, and if there's any stupid little boys listening who wants to put on their stupid little uniform and pretend to be heroes, you're not brave, you're cowards. Okay? Because true heroes they stand up and say, no, I'm not fighting silly, stupid wars on the behalf of silly, stupid states. You know, I'm going to do live, not killing children and bombing hospitals, because they were the ones that get killed eventually. It's not just military personnel.
No, it never is. It never has been, and it never will be. I mean, this is a complete misdemeanor. I don't know where it's come from. Oh, innocent civilians have been killed. Well, of course they have. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, seriously, what do you think is going to happen? And it is. It's ego. I mean, look at Putin. You know, his ego. Oh, I want my legacy. You know, he doesn't care about the 1.2 million Russians that have either died or have been seriously injured in the conflict in the war with Ukraine. He doesn't care. It's all about his ego.
Yeah. How can we possibly criticise Putin with what? How can America possibly criticise Putin with what they're doing? What they've done in Venezuela? I mean, they can't criticise Putin. They're doing exactly the same thing and worse.
Yeah, I know, but they believe they've got the moral high ground. I happen to think that killing people is abhorrent, and you know, if you're a Christian, you would agree with me. You know, I mean, these people call themselves Christians or whatever it is their religion is, and yet life has always been sacred, and in all religions, and so you're not really that religious. I don't know. I can't make sense.
Supposedly, he supposedly taught. If you believe that he existed, that's another story. But he taught turn the other cheek. He taught peace, right? He was probably a Sufi, actually, but he taught peace if he did exist. Now, They fight in onward Christian soldiers, right? Well, they fight in the name of Christianity. Well, that's completely against Christianity, but nothing they do makes sense. And I don't think it's meant to make sense. It's just meant to confuse.
Yeah, you look at the Crusades and the millions and millions of people that were slaughtered during that. No, I mean, religion, as this is another reason I'm not a fan, has killed more people than even mosquitoes. So, it's not something that I agree with. Thank you very much indeed, Tonya. A great call. I've got this message here from Joanna. Says, I want to know what MI5 and MI6 are telling Starmer and what they told Conservatives before him. No attempt was ever made to stop the marches, the boats, the rape gangs, even simple football match in Birmingham. We haven't got the capability to stop any of it if they kick off. In certain areas, the police have done nothing because of local community leaders. Since 2018 to 2024, 26,000 Iranians came over the channel, at least 10,000 last year. Terror cells are right across the EU and here. There are also a lot of people fleeing that disgusting regime that we've talked about, right? Who wouldn't want to leave Iran? But I am sure within that number, there are also people who want to do us harm. I agree to that as well. And she said, I think you're onto something. Thank you. I just like to ask questions, that's all. So give us a call, 0344 499 1000, and send a message to talk, and then your message 87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to This Is Talk, and it's Petrie, and this is Talk Back, and that is what you are doing. Some messages here I want to read out. This is from Matt, who says, America's post-war foreign policy is a series of botched, illegal and discredited operations all over Asia and South America. Petrie, I've been saying that Trump is a messianic narcissist for ages. He told us God saved him from the assassin's bullet. He has been making himself clear. Yeah, to credit to Trump, he's always said what he's going to do, right? Apart from when he said no more wars and wasn't interested in regime change in foreign lands and all of that. So there's two countries so far he's tried to affect regime change. But apart from that, he's always said, hasn't he? He's always been honest in a way. He's always said what he's thinking. I don't think he has a filter. So it just comes straight out. Snakebite has said, hi Petrie, on Hegseth's face you see a wacky drunk about to get behind the wheel. On Vance's face you see a constipated look complete with eyeliner, with a laughy face. The special relationship is with the ordinary people, never with the politicians. I just knew I had to chime in on this right after the 2024 election when I happened to be in London the morning after Trump won. I stood in front of Downing Street and said my piece through a sign which parodies special relationship, but it ends with a T instead of a P. Yeah. There's no plan for Iran, and I doubt Trump even thinks about the collateral damage done, especially with all of these school kids who lost their lives. He's a felon and he behaves like one. And that royal invitation Trump got last year, just a glorified waiver stamped by a king, just so that Trump could enter the UK despite his criminal record. And that's from Snakebite, who I believe is based in the US. So that's from Snakebite. I always love Snakebite's messages, they're brilliant. There's another one down there that I can't get. Anyway, I'll get that moved in a minute. Right, so let's go back to your calls. And Sheldon is on the phone from Swansea. Good morning, Sheldon.
Hello, Petrie. I'm here to know you again, darling.
Oh, it's lovely to talk to you. It always is.
Thank you, my sweetheart. Right, let's go back to this special relationship stuff, yes? Mm-hmm. Which is very important. Now, nobody has mentioned the term American exceptionalism yet, which is very important. They've always believed, basically, in that principle. So that means that nobody else is exceptional except them. And this is very tied up with the MAGA movement because they also believe that as well, because it's America first always. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look back at what they've actually done for us in this special relationship, if we go back to the end of the Second World War, they did indeed help us out.
Of course they did, yeah.
They did indeed. And they charged us until 3 years ago.
Yes, we had to pay it all back, which we did. I don't think we charged them for the Gulf, though, did we? Did we charge them?
No, we didn't. No, we never charge anybody. And if I, in my memory, I can't remember all the Russian people who died charging us for their help either, at all.
I mean, it's very true. The idea of this American exceptionalism, it's very interesting if you look on social media and you see a lot of Americans that have either been on holiday or have moved out of America in the last year, and they're completely shocked because they're told that, you know, that theirs is the only really free democracy. That, you know, the whole NHS and things like that are denigrated, they're put down, they say it's ridiculous, it's awful, it's terrible, it doesn't work, so that nobody in America asks for anything better for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you look at the way that Americans, the tax that they pay and what they get for that, they barely get a thing for it. It is crazy. I don't understand how they think that the rest of the world, you know, then they go to Europe and they go, oh my God, there was one young woman who was in tears because she was in Germany and she got a part-time job as a barista in Germany. I think it was in Berlin. And with that, she got medical cover. And she couldn't believe it. She was a part-time job, but I was invited to sign up for free medical care because I was paying tax. She was in tears. She couldn't believe it.
We have the proof of the pudding of what exceptionalism is. Americans, the American concept means at the moment. They detest the EU, they detest NATO, they detest us. We have ESCA. Disgusting remarks that he's made regarding us. Whether we believe that our Prime Minister is a strong or weak person doesn't come into this business. The first thing he had to do is make sure that we weren't dragged into an ongoing conflict that had no end plan, and was not going to end up in the same state as Libya in Afghanistan. And I believe that exceptionalism in American terms believes that they are God's people and alone God's people, not the Western.
Well, they're taught it from an early age, aren't they? They're taught it at school. The American flag,
you are religious,
all that stuff.
Matter.
Yeah,
the way they treat God is that they are God. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So I don't think we own anything. I don't believe for 1 minute any relationship other than any relationship they have with any other country that can help them out at any time when they carry on with adventures in the world which are unsavory, dangerous, and probably costing billions of lives.
Yeah.
If you look back at Vietnam, you'll see it. We weren't dragged into that, thank God. If they couldn't do that in 20 years, what hope have they got of doing anything else?
Yeah, exactly that. And you look at the mess that is always left behind. And that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. I mean, okay, like I was saying to Tonya, I agree with the regime being toppled in Iran. I agree with trying to stop them building their weapons. But
nobody likes them. Nobody likes them.
But I fear for repeats of history, where look at Afghanistan. We abandoned that country to the people we were fighting. And Trump has already said today, he said, oh, we did have a few ideas of people to take over from the Ayatollah, but we killed them as well. So
I'm glad you've said that, because when it comes to international American adventures, the word I want to use predominantly is future abandonment. It's unsavory, it's immoral, and it proves the fact that all these wars throughout the world, anyway, in history, it doesn't matter, but American wars in particular are particularly to do with money. There is no other reason why they go there. It's exploitation and money.
Well, that's certainly why we've interfered with Iran before. Certainly why people have been moved, leaders have been removed from Iran before, because they had the audacity to try and nationalise their oil.
You can go back to...
And Venezuela, by the way, they were doing the same.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if you look at the history of Iran, it's very unstable anyway, politically. But the Shah, the most recent episode, he had a brutal police force.
Absolutely brutal. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just fear that we're going to leave it even worse than it is right now. And that isn't, that shouldn't be acceptable to anybody. Sheldon, thank you. Send my love to Faith, won't you? Thank you for calling. Just going to squeeze Trevor in, if you don't mind being squeezed in. Trevor?
Okay, love. Listen, to me, and by the way, I love you, Petrie. I think you're a lovely person, by the way, love.
Thank you. That's very kind.
To me, it's dead straightforward. If you put nuclear missiles in the hands of somebody like Iran, then you are a threat, not only to the Middle East, but to the rest of the world.
Completely agree. Completely agree. They had to be taken out. I agree with that. My concern is what we leave behind.
then what are you going to do with that situation then? It's just...
Well, you plan. You plan. You have an exit strategy. You have a plan to support the people of Iran and the country that you've just bombed. You have a plan. And I don't believe there is one.
Honestly, seriously, I cannot understand what parts of this basic mathematic you get wrong. They were a danger.
Not the people, the regime, yeah. But if we're going to bomb a country into nothing and then just walk away, well, you know, leave it to civil war and innocent people die.
All right, so consequently,